outside, like not necessarily with an outside independent project manager, are the constraints on us being able to work together legally under the sunshine laws, recognizing that, you know, the working group you're on with the county, you're able to meet and have these conversations that we are not able to have here. So just that reality of operating under the sunshine laws, I think, is forcing us to think more creatively about how we do it. And I just this weekend, I read this book, Climate Justice by Mary, I don't have to show you, but Mary Robinson, who was the president of Ireland and the High Commissioner on Climate Change. And I kept thinking about how there's such a strong emphasis, and we really want to be true to the equity questions and the climate justice questions as we do this process. And I just wonder, again, if there's a way we can establish like working groups, citizen working groups, who are sort of like, we're liaisons and a steering committee for these working groups, who could kind of take individual tasks and collecting more information like Cayman has done and run with it. Because this climate justice book talks about like ordinary citizens around the world who never saw themselves as climate champions and ended up testifying before the UN and really trying to, you know, drive global climate policy. And I think we have a lot of people in this community who are these, you know, climate champions that would come to the table and give their energy and expertise. And I just think it's fertile ground that we should maybe think creatively about how to engage and sort of activate those community members to assist us where we can't work together in between our workshops and meetings.
Thanks, Jenison. Christine, I think you're up next.
Okay, thanks, Megan. I guess my understanding of coming into this was that we were the advisors, we were the idea people, we were the people that were coming up with the things that we needed. And Forrest, you've done a really good job of explaining to us how the city and county resources can work with us, how many resources there are. And my understanding of coming onto this committee was that we would be the idea people, we would request things, and then the things would be, however that's done, be kind of brought and filled in. Having been a consultant for 20 years, I understand, and doing project management on complex things like this, I am fully aware of what that would take if you brought someone in from the outside. It's a lot, and it's something that I guess what I'm hoping is, after listening to what we've heard from the city and the county, and there does seem to be resistance to bringing someone from the outside in, my hope would be that we could figure out a way that as a group, we could, with Forrest being, if you would, the facilitator of bringing in the resources, the coordinator of the resources, to the extent that that's appropriate, that we could create a framework and a concept, and then say, these are the pieces that need to come in, and then request those pieces to be brought to us. And those pieces are either brought to us by someone on staff, or if someone from the outside needs to be brought in, that's how it's brought in. But our job is to say, this is what is needed. These are the things that need to come in here. This is the data that's required. And then Forrest helps to work with the resources that we have within the city and county, and then potentially externally to get that here. That said, we still need someone who is leading this, and it can't be Megan being asked to do all these things. So I see there's two parts of this. Is one, we have to determine what our role is and how we get the things that need to be filled into the framework we create. And two, how much work is one person going to be taking on with this, or how much can we kind of, how do we deal with that part?
Thank you, Christine. Megan, I think you're up.
Christine, thank you for bringing all of that up, because I also wanted to share that, we came into this anticipating being an advisory board. And to be honest, I don't have the bandwidth to be doing the heavy lifting for a lot of these projects. And I'm really glad to be here and to be part of driving where these go. But I really like Christine's point that we need to be, that this data is out there and it can be coming to us so that we can help drive and guide. And also Jennison's point that the community needs to be involved, that this shouldn't all be done by just the 9 of us sitting here in our little Zoom room making decisions that are going to impact the whole of our community. So, for whatever that is worth, I think there are tasks we can take on, but a lot of this either needs to come from the community or from people who are engaged in the work, whether it's the staff who are already doing these things or outside people we need to have come in, because this is a huge lift. And it's not that we can't do it, but should we be driving it by ourselves, but also, making sure we're taking advantage of resources that already exist rather than trying to lift everything on our own.
Thank you, Megan. I see Forrest.
I think you guys are all spot on, just completely spot on, especially for the lift that has been asked of us. A couple of things. So we do have those community groups that are working on climate change as well. And you all have asked, rightfully so and repeatedly, how do we work outside of this sunshine law? How do we work with some freedom? We can turn to some of these groups that are doing this work, like the NCAACP, like the CWC, like several others, and say, hey, we're looking at this issue or this item or this focus area, and we do not have the bandwidth. What are you all doing? We're not allowed to talk to each other, is oversimplification. Can you all run with this? Do a program, do what you think is best, and come back to us. And then we will take it to our powers that be, the staff, the people that chose you all to give this advice. We will take that to them. So that's one way that you can use these other groups for specific tasks. Sometimes that's going to work and sometimes it's not. At that point, it's a committee working with another committee to do a thing. If all of you have experience with committees, that's a dice roll, but it can work. It can totally work that way. Another issue, just to be aware of, obnoxious bureaucratic issue. The Joint Water and Climate Policy Board doesn't really have a budget and wouldn't really be hiring these consultants. It would be the different municipalities. It would be the different jurisdictions. So we would need to convince, and it is possible, the Board of County Commissioners and the City Commission and possibly GRU at the same time to approve hiring a consultant to do a particular task or job. In some cases, we're going to need that. We're going to need that for the inventory. We're going to need that for a vulnerability analysis. Even with the vulnerability analysis, the city is doing a little bit of their vulnerability analysis, and the county has an idea of what they want to do. But there's that practical nature of it's not quite as simple as hiring a project manager to pull all this together across jurisdictions within a county. It can be done. It has been done. But that is, just to put that in a political perspective, a bureaucratic perspective, hiring someone across jurisdictions is challenging. So with those two things, I would say we are all the project managers. You are the project managers. What you can do is what you bring to the project, and what you can't do is what you pull into your project. And so if we have 9 project managers and this project management group is the citizens, it is the community. And we're fortunate that you are all have so much expertise and are academics that is something that most places don't get to work with. And I do think that that's something that we can run with and that we can make some good products out of. But it is a challenge, and we do need to figure out that project management.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and voice my opinion that I don't know that 9 part-time project managers who can't speak to each other except for 4 hours a month are really the way to coordinate a project this complex. I put together, and kind of anticipating how this conversation would go, put together some ideas regarding roles and responsibilities. Because maybe you all have figured it out, but I have a full-time job. I am passionate about this. I have wanted to do everything that I have done this far, but I cannot be the project manager on this, especially, I have my own, business and consultancy to run, but I also can't project manage something that I can't see with people I can't talk to. So, even if I absolutely had the time and wanted to do it as a member of this committee, I don't think that would be a good role because of the restrictions of the Sunshine Law and not being able to actually coordinate with the individuals involved. So this is a possible process with roles and responsibilities. It honestly, thankfully, is kind of in line with what we've been talking about, but I would like to kind of get your all's opinion on this, because it's going to be asking, certainly going to be asking something of you all as well. And we really need to be honest about what we're able to do. So suggestion is that the CCAC would provide direction and guidance for staff. So by direction, that means that we would identify the impacts and vulnerabilities that we want to address. We would say, hey, we want to look at this issue. We would provide guidance in the sense that we would develop the goals. What does success look like? What do we want to measure? We would provide constraints. What sort of solutions are we willing to consider? What do we want to include? What do we want to exclude? And we would provide examples and benchmarking. So we would say, hey, this is a project that we think could be really applicable to our local community, and we should look at, possibly mimicking this or drawing from this as an example. And the CCAC will be engaging with the community. Our role here is to act as that bridge between our community, staff, and elected officials. Staff would then, and when I say staff here, if this is something that staff realistically can't do, then that's when we're going to have to find other resources. And that means putting together a proposal and going to the Joint Policy Board and trying to hire someone across jurisdictions, or trying to hire an additional staff person. But staff is going to be the ones, or the consultant, to gather the information, to do the research, and to present specific action or solution proposals to this committee based on the committee's guidance. So that will be, building off of existing policies and programs, and also creating new policies and programs that fill in, gaps. CCAC then is going to provide feedback and refinement based on those proposals, and then staff will finalize the draft proposal for wherever it goes. So ultimately, submission to the Joint Policy Board saying this is the advice of the committee. Some really straightforward projects, sort of our low-hanging fruit, might go to Joint Policy Board just right away on their own, this is a quick to implement package. And some other proposals might kind of get put in the pocket and bundled so that it becomes sort of a larger packet that gets sent to Joint Policy Board as something that's a bit more comprehensive. Yeah, all right, so how does that look? Is that something that we as committee members are prepared and able to do? And just to remind us, this would be the ask, is that in between meetings, we are are working on identifying, the impacts and vulnerabilities. Actually, that part will probably happen in the meetings, but then in between meetings, we're going to be doing the research to think about and develop the goals, constraints, and then coming up with examples. So Stephen, I see your hand up. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. This is going to sound kind of hypercritical, but you did a masterful job of putting that spreadsheet together. Thank you, thank you. And I'm not criticizing that in any stretch of the imagination. I think that will be incredibly useful. What I'm concerned about is some of the exterior players that don't necessarily have climate change as their mission. For example, Alachua Public Health. That's one area that comes to mind that really does need critical attention. And I don't think they've got anybody there who can address the role of climate change and public health, the interactions between those two things. I'm not sure there's really anybody at the School of Public Health at UF that also can do that, for the simple reason that only just this last semester have they begun to teach a course in which climate change and its role in public health is part of the standard curriculum. And this course that they're just now teaching is in its initial phases of development. So my argument is that there's going to be certain areas that appear on that spreadsheet where we're not relying on the expertise of the county and city staff, which I agree is first class and can probably pull us through. But there are going to be other groups like areas of food security, areas of water security, certainly public health aspects of climate change that need to be addressed. And so I have some concern about the extent to which we can find the resources here locally to address those things. That said, I actually agree with Hannah. I think it could be just such an enormous pain in the rear to organize the bureaucracy to find that outside consultant. So if we can find a better way to do it, I'm all for that. But anyway, thanks for considering what I just said.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else? Floor is open.
I also agree with what Stephen said. I think that it would be really a very bureaucracy task to try to find, given the time frame that we're working in, to get a consultant that could take on this kind of task. I think that if we could use the guidelines that you put here, Megan, and work with staff, I think that we could come up with something that would be a great starting point, and it would be something that would come, I think, from the community and from our area. And then if we had to refine it at some other time with the consultant. But I think that if staff could do a lot of the information that you indicated here, it would make a lot of sense in terms of getting things done quickly.
Thank you, John.
I'm
Forrest, is this
just
a reasonable
concerned.
ask? Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
John,
I
go
was
ahead.
just concerned with, and the basis of my recommendation here is the fact that it would take a lot of coordination between the city, the county, and GRU to actually agree upon a consultant, time frame wise.
Thanks, John. Forrest, is this, are these roles and responsibilities, is that something that you think that staff as currently allocated are able to handle, or that it would be realistic to request additional, say, staff resources? I mean, a couple of the commissioners mentioned that, you all are not exactly sitting on a whole lot of bandwidth yourselves. So is sort of this sort of role a reasonable expectation for the staff that you're working with on the climate, sort of your all's internal climate committee?
Absolutely. And that this outline is something that staff doesn't normally even get to work with. That is
sad and frightening.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, this is clear. Staff would tell you if they cannot do the ask. This outline, I am very comfortable speaking for lots of staff saying that they would be comfortable with this. Being where staff can get uncomfortable is just being told, solve climate change. Where we are a lot more comfortable is when you give us an outline with bullet points that tells us what we're going to do and what you're going to do. And when that happens, you have a great staff on your hands, and we can do that. Absolutely.
Well, that is excellent. All right. Do we have any more kind of discussion on the CCAC side? Are we comfortable moving forward with this as our working process and with these roles and responsibilities? Are we each comfortable taking on what's being asked here? Seeing some nods.
Megan, will you go?
Nods.
Staff says yes.
And Megan, will you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
I just would add, I'm comfortable with it. I think it's definitely necessary and to go in this direction. And it sounds like the rest of the committee and those on the call do as well. I just don't want to close the door on any other opportunities, thinking longer term and holistically about this. And I'd like to, maybe it's a footnote, maybe it's for later, but I think personally, I would love to see an element where we have climate, like community climate fellows or champions or something, who are working with the staff, who are taking one piece of this much bigger puzzle that we're advising them on. And there's somebody, that we've got a community member in partnership working and endorsed by this board, or, like invited by this board to take that and run. And there maybe needs to be funding that goes along with that. Maybe it's like a fellowship type, something. I don't know where or how we could capture that, but I think just as a way to recognize that we're trying to deepen our bench and bring more people in who have the capacity to work outside of the sunshine laws on enacting these plans and helping bring in the resources that we're asking for, or technical analyses.
So Jonathan, do you see that as something where it's like a training program that we put together, or this is just where we identify people in the community who are already, sort of have the expertise and would be willing to just kind of jump on board and work with us all, like from the get-go?
The latter, and to give context, it's like I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and we were assigned a local counterpart in our village, and that's that person who does the work that we were invited there to that community to do. And you have someone to lean on who has that local expertise. And I'm kind of thinking in the same way that to be true to the top down and bottom up, like the grassroots effort that we're trying to make happen here, I think if we had, I feel like it's almost like that third leg of a stool. Like we have the staff, we have the advisory board, and we have the joint water and climate policy board decision makers. We have staff backing, and we know they have a depth of, capacity, but it's like if they could bring on fellows or community partners, I don't know exactly what it would look like or how it would be framed, but I just feel like we need to be able to pitch the ball to the community with a leader who has that expertise and buy-in and commitment to climate action. And maybe that's unrealistic to think we can be able to do that, but I don't want to not go there. I don't want to just roll it out before we even consider it, I guess.
How about that?
Does that answer your question, Megan?
Yes. I added a little bullet down here. We can flesh it out, but just to capture it so that this kind of goes forward. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I want to be able to kind of create these ambassadors of climate action, I guess is the term I used at some other point too. But yeah, but that captures it, Megan. Thank you.
Okay.
The name of the program is escaping me, but the city certainly has that for just teaching citizens about local government and how it works. Like, I can't remember the name of the program now, but that's.
I know what program you're talking about because
Yeah.
yes, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's a citizens civic like engagement and leadership type program.
Yeah, some kind of academy, Citizens Academy, but
Citizens
it could be
Academy.
something.
Yep.
Janice Gary just put it in the chat. Citizens Academy.
All right.
So yeah,
Citizens
very similar for climate change.
Okay. I think that's a great idea, and we'll make it part of the official plan. We can figure out, kind of flesh it out as we go forward. That we don't need to have it all down right now. All right.
I have just going back briefly, a question, well, a comment with the community part, the engaging with the community. I would like to say that I think that we should be, and I think we do understand that that is a huge task that will also require a lot of support. And we would need to be getting resources to help with that, to help organize and communicate and plan and coordinate and implement things like that, because the community engagement is it's a big piece of this. The other thing that's completely separate is, and this is just because I'm, I guess, naive enough, how much more, if we as a committee say that we want Forrest more engaged, how much more can we get him engaged? And is this something where if we ask, we can receive, but obviously they can't suggest it, Forrest can't suggest it because that's not his role right now, but can we as a committee say that we want to ask for more of his resources and time? Is that something that is askable? Is that something that would be useful? Is that something, again, I don't know about how all this works, but he seems to be a really great resource if we could get more of his time.
And just for you all, I am devoting about 25 to 30 hours out of my 60-hour work week to CCAC.
Okay. So we already have a third of your okay. I just didn't know if this was like a you say the magic word and this we end up with more of your time just because, but we have to ask it.
I don't think that there's a cap, and I don't think that there's a problem with asking.
Okay. Because as coordination and as facilitator, using your capabilities would be really nice if we could get more.
Thank you. I can move a lot of levers, but I'm not allowed to say how many of my hours I devote to which thing, just to a large extent.
So if we came back and said we need to clone you twice and we need 3 forests,
I might object to that for ethical reasons, but
well, but recognizing we can't extend you further than any one human being can be extended, but
I think that it will help when there are city staff liaison devoted and a GRU staff liaison devoted, and we have already had a significant amount of county resources pointed towards this as well. It's already turned from me having to create a lot of products and things like that to being able to turn more towards the project management and ask others to create the products or fill the gap. That's already changed in the past 3-4 weeks. And I expect that to continue to change and evolve, especially as the direction from the Joint Policy Board becomes clearer and clearer. You know, that board is also brand new. So they're figuring each other out. They're figuring out their staff that are devoted to them and things like that.
So the answer is we can ask the Joint Policy Board for more forest time or additional forest. All right. So I guess we will move forward with this. We're not closing any doors, but this is going to be our working process outline. Is everyone good with this? All right. So the next thing, I'm being cognizant of time. We only have really 20 minutes left. So I think that one of the big things we wanted to talk about was the communications plan, and I don't really want to start that if we can't finish it, but I think that we may have a chance to kind of talk about this first batch of topics, and then at our next meeting, we can discuss the community engagement communications plan in the context of this first topic. And I think that might actually help inform the conversation. So as long as everyone's okay with that little modification to the agenda, I'd like to try to get through the first topics, and then we can open up for public comment and then save the really detailed conversation about the communications plan for next time. Is that good with everyone? All right. So some first topic suggestions. These are based on some of our conversations at the last meeting. I put energy efficiency on top here, largely because of what happened in the Joint Policy Board early this afternoon. So that push from Commissioner Alford to really do energy efficiency, and also because it touches on a lot of the issues that we had said were important to us, including housing and public health and equity and energy use, and it also does directly impact emissions. So for energy efficiency, Commissioner Alford's program is going to target both lower income homeowners as well as renters. And renters, I think, are super important, and that's often overlooked, but that's a huge part of our housing market. We can also look at energy efficiency of existing buildings, so kind of looking at the commercial and industrial sectors, and then new construction, and also look at ways of really tying this in potentially directly to affordable housing. There are programs and policies and organizations that are already in place, obviously the CWC, and there are certainly levers in the code that we could pull on for energy efficiency. So that's why that one's up there. Probably nobody missed what was happening in Texas. So the storm impact and cascading infrastructure failure, that's basically what happened in Texas. It got cold, and then the power went out, and then the pipes froze, and then the pipes burst, and then even some emergency communications networks almost went down. It's also what happened in New Orleans with Katrina. And again, this one really also speaks to our emphasis on equity, because rich people go to Cancun and people who can't freeze in their homes. And so a lot of this cascading infrastructure failure, the impacts are most heavily felt on those who don't have a lot of personal resources to protect themselves from these sorts of impacts. And then the third option, the food security and food deserts, which there seems to be a lot of interest and passion about as well on the committee, including access to affordable, healthy, fresh foods. And then Forrest had mentioned that staff are already doing some work on this topic on like food deserts. So again, that's one where we can kind of, I don't want to say piggyback, but we already kind of have a little bit of a step or a rung up on the ladder for this one. So yeah, so I just open it up. Does anybody have preferences for any one of these topics? Was there another sort of area that's not on this list but that you feel really strongly about that you'd want to start on? The idea here is really we're going to test that process that we just described. And for our first batch, see how it goes in terms of navigating this and navigating our own roles. And from there, we can refine our process and then start building on that and start working on additional topics. And hopefully we'll be able to, we'll see kind of what staff capacity is, but I mean, ideally, we're not going to just be working on one at a time. We'll have multiple in parallel, but I kind of think for the first time, we should probably just pick one or maybe pick two. So I'll open it up. Any thoughts on this?
I can see separate staff that I would divide this up to already. So it wouldn't be going through just one group already, which is good.
For all of them, Forrest, or just for one? All of them?
Yep.
Okay. Don't everyone speak up at once. I know we're getting close to 8 o'clock. So I know we're all tired.
I speak in favor of these three topics. I think even if there's more, I think this is a good start where we can flush things out in these areas. Definitely, they are things that's going to surface quickly. Energy efficiency, energy usage, or even as we had said, and many times during some of the storm impact areas, would also be on energy and water. And I think water is also important there too, along with that energy efficiency. So I do think that these three areas are areas of large impact.
John, do you have a preference for where to start? Like which one of these would you put at the top of your list in terms of just the first thing that we tackle?
I think the immediate probably would be in the energy efficiency, because we get an electric bill, we get a water bill every every month, and I think that that energy part goes across many of the sectors, especially here in with GRU area. I know in the county, for the schools, for example, we have 7 different utilities, but GRU serves about 70% of the schools. So I look at a lot of the bills, and it's amazing how much I think our schools are out of whack with what the norm should be. And I think we can also find that in our housing community. I worked a lot with energy efficiency with Water, Power, and Light, and I did a lot of home energy audits, and I was amazed at the impact people could make if they had an attitude change.
Thank you, John.
And an education about things.
Yeah, and if I could just add to the energy efficiency piece, and I would second that should stay at the top, especially with the focus on equity and low income and housing affordability. The two programs, and I know that Commissioner Alford requested information about the Community Weatherization Coalition here in Alachua County as a model that's been addressing this issue for 10 years here in our community and helping low-income families improve their energy efficiency through at-home energy audits and trained volunteers. And also, John, to your point, I know Duval County, their school board energy consultant, she was an engineer, started a program back in like 2014 that audited all of the schools and set it up as essentially like a revolving loan fund, but they would identify the highest impact schools and then go in and identify, you know, targeted retrofits for those schools for energy and water. And then it just each year that list of the highest energy users would change using schools, and that program paid itself back in the first year, like with the first investment that the county made. And it's a really great model that I know some other counties in Florida adopted. And so we've got some success stories to look to that we could learn from and implement quickly because it's already been done in Florida. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennison. Anyone else? All right. Well, for the sake of time, I guess if there's no objections, then we'll put energy efficiency at the top, and we will proceed with energy efficiency as our first initiative. So let's see. We're going to do this next time. Or was it? Next steps. All right. So for us, for CCAC, I'm going to send out that spreadsheet that we talked about. You don't have to go into the guts of it. If you just want to, you know, kind of think about the individual vulnerabilities or impacts and add to it, we can discuss kind of what sectors to tag it with later. At this point, we're just kind of brain dumping what the impacts are that we want to be able to address. So that next time when we're picking our batches, we have a list. We can say, well, these are the things that we had talked about wanting to deal with. So for this first topic of energy efficiency, for each of us for the next meeting, let's think about what will we measure and how are we going to define success? Like, what are our metrics going to be? And if you happen to have quantitative goals, throw those in, that's great. That is not necessary at this stage, but really we just kind of want to think about what are we going to measure and how are we going to define success? Constraints, what are the boundaries? This could be as big or as small as we want. Where do we want to start? Like what are the boundaries for this? And then benchmarking. Jennison, you already mentioned some examples coming out of Duval. We have the CWC here locally. So this can literally just be links to other programs as examples to give the staff and say, hey, these are things that we think are good ideas and that could work for us. So I mean, my suggestion here is that we each email a document to Forrest 2 days before the next meeting so he has a chance to compile it. And then that's going to form the basis for our conversation, our next conversation. Although I said the next meeting here, but I really think the next meeting needs to be about our communication plan. So in terms of next meeting's agenda, I think communications plan needs to be at the top. And then if we have time, then we'll get to this.
That's very helpful to me because I will go ahead and set aside that 2 days before to vote entirely. So thank you.
Thanks, Forrest. Christine, were you going to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say that as people are working on this, it would be helpful that if their thought process got down to the level of who this is useful for, that you can keep thinking of your target audience for your measures of success, et cetera. So if it's going to the general public or if it's going to decision makers, business owners, et cetera, if you get to that point, that it can be worked in there as well.
Excellent, thank you.
And that can be something that I ask. every time something comes to me, just to double check. Who is this for?
All right. Do we have, yeah, any other suggestions, like Christine's, any questions or thoughts before we move on to public comment? Not seeing any. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share here and bring it back. All right. So communications planning, we are moving that to the next meeting. So Forrest, just for you, let's please put the communications plan at the top of our next agenda. And then the second item will be basically to discuss the resources that we're going to send to you about energy efficiency. But we need to prioritize the communication plan and really get that going. We also have suggested items for the next regular meeting. I realize that comes after public comment, but while we're on the topic, does anybody have a suggestion other than the two I just mentioned for our next meeting? Nope. All right. Forrest or Brandy, can I hand it over to you for coordinating the public comment?
Yes.
All right. It's all yours.
Let's see what we've got. I think we can just say if there's anyone that has comments that they would like to make, please raise your hand and we will answer in how the hands pop up in order. Any public comments? Anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Where's the hand raise?
Oh, Nancy, that works. You can go ahead and start.
Okay. Oh, I'm so glad to be back. Nancy Darren. I think great choices, and certainly food. Yeah, all three are great. The energy and energy efficiency, great. CWC had gotten some grants and they have a whole report, probably a year and a half old now, but they had quite a bit of data, so that may be useful. And their work's fabulous. And then when the school board hired Teresa Sperling Wood a number of years ago to look at energy efficiency, I think before you got there, John, or were you there already when Teresa got there? But
No, I came in after Teresa.
After Teresa, right. But the first year Teresa was on board, she saved the school district $1.4 million by the low-hanging fruit that she was able to identify just in the first year. So, and then on energy return on energy invested, when you invest in energy efficiency for low-income housing, your multiplier factor, your return on investment, I have the chart of it. I think I sent to Forrest, or I will send to Forrest, but it's something like $2.23 for every dollar invested is your return in what you can provide in a better quality of life and healthier home and lower bills and stuff. So yeah, so much. So food and energy, I have a lot of links and data from my years of work on both. So I will be sharing that now that I have a computer back after almost 2 weeks of being out of whack. So thank you all for this work. It's incredible.
Yes, please feel free to send those to me and then I will send them out to everyone. Is there anyone else for comment, for public comment? Does not look like we have any. I believe we're all set, Chair.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I think that we're on a really good track. I hope you all feel the same way. And I'll send out that spreadsheet for Forrest, and I'll also have him send out the presentation so that just everybody has a copy. either post it on the Dropbox or just attach it to an email. And our next meeting is not in front of me with a calendar. Forrest?
March 11th.
March 11th. All right. So please send out your document to Forrest with those resources by March 9th so he has a chance to compile them. But the focus on March 11th is going to be our communications plan. So please be thinking about that, how we want to reach out both during COVID times and hopefully in the after times or the post emergency times when we might be able to meet in person. And also be thinking about who you want to, who we would want to be engaging in that process. And thank you very much. We'll see you next time, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.